How's it going, everybody? I wanted to. I haven't put anything out, at least it seems like in a while. It's been more kind of free form. So I wanted to put out at least a string of videos that are going to be covering the prep that I'm doing right now for the security track. And I've actually been going through quite a bit of kind of focus study, and I want to kind of cover what my lab looks like so that you guys can, at least if you wanted to model a potential lab. I got dog hair on my face. For a security lab that you might be able to leverage and stuff like that. Whether or not you're actually going to have the ability to install or license some of the stuff that I've got working is maybe it may not be supported on your side. I work for a Cisco partner, so I get a lot of licensing and access to things and stuff like that. So I get access to a lot of software licensing. I have to get kind of creative, and I usually end up having to go to Cisco's website, and on the licensing portal I click on the demo licenses and I order a license, and I'm able to order a license again. Must have been too close to the dog. Anyway, at least it feels like there's a dog here. Anyway, what I've got going on here is I've been leveraging VMware a lot lately for a lot of my preparation for a variety of things. Like I've got a bunch of VMs over here that are running. I've got routers that are dedicated to security preparation. I've got a bunch of Windows 7 PCs that I've got rolled out. I've got the web security appliance deployed. I've got the email security appliance deployed. Identity Services Engine 2.3. I've got I did for a period of time. I've got ACS running too. I've got that licensed. I also have I have it turned off right now because I'm not playing with it. It was the Firepower Management Center, and then a Firepower Threat Defense, and I think I don't have one right now. At one point in time, I did have it the IPS for Firepower deployed as well, and I'll be deploying those again later on down the road. But I've got 4 ASAV 9.8 code. I think that's the latest out at the time of this recording was 9.8. That's what these are. Once I get a little bit more focused and I get through, basically what I'm doing is I'm going through what would be considered CCNP security, and spending a lot of time in VPN and stuff like that as we go through the topics and stuff like that. So wanted to kind of give you guys an idea as to what my lab looks like and how I go about getting the reachability and stuff like that I get. So basically, here's what my lab looks like. Let me go grab my pen pad real quick. And I'm hoping this is useful to at least somebody. You do have to have kind of an idea and a basic understanding how vSphere works in order to get this to work. I'll kind of walk you through the logic and how you could like map a vSwitch and stuff like that. So it's I can get away with a lot of things in vSphere because just general understanding of how networking works will do that. But basically the way that I've got it set up now is I have over here on the left hand side of the screen, I've got these routers here, and I have a cord in my way. Let's see, I've got these routers here, and I've got these PCs here. And then I've got the domain controller here. This domain controller is also acting as a certificate authority, a web front end, so an IIS server. One thing I've actually got to do on the web server portion of it and the excuse me, the certificate authority, and I'm not sure if that's two separate operations to make this happen, but I have to move from clear text web to HTTPS or 443 in order for that to work. I'm not sure if I just deployed it wrong or whatever, but the domain controller shows up as a clear text web page. But it's, whenever I'm doing the testing, it's always, you know, internal to the network, so it really doesn't make much of a difference. But I've got that. Then I have these ASAs sitting up here. I have the ACS server sitting here. I have WSA sitting here. I have ESA sitting here. That's pretty much the bulk of what I've been messing around with lately. These CSRs right here are testing other things like other random crap that I have to mess with. This is more work-related testing. This is actually the most recent version of CSR 1000V, which I believe is the 16.6 code, I think is what these guys are running. Everest? Denali? Whatever's the latest one. I think it's Everest. But I got this deployed. It's kind of weird once they changed it from, when they went from 3 code to 16 code, they made it a little weird. Because they've got, in the 16 code, they've got the Denali train, and they've also got the Everest train, EST. So it's actually kind of weird. I haven't had any time to really dig into either one of them, but I was working with a customer, and I was running into a lot of issues with the 16 train. So I basically downloaded. What I've been doing is I don't reinstall the router. Like I don't do a clean OBA install. What I'll do is I'll take the bin file for CSR 1000V. I'll download that, then I'll upload it via TFTP, and then I'll reload the router with a new boot statement pointing to the older code or the newer code. This way, I can have 4 or 5 versions of the code running, and I can, you know, all it takes is a quick reload, and away I go. So that's basically what we have going on with these guys. So that's kind of the underlying portion of things. So what I've been doing is I take, now the way that I've got this deployed here, and I'll put this in blue for you guys so it's a little easier for you guys to see. This guy right here, this would be what I would consider to be the center of my internet world. So I take R5. I have this drawn on a whiteboard at work, so it's easy to map out in head. It's a very simple internet-based connection. So what I do is R5 is acting as an ISP, or an INET router. And what I do is I take, these are all CSR 1000Vs running 3.16.2, which if you search for the CCA Security version 5 blueprint, and you look for the operating systems and the versions, the lab software, I downloaded the exact same version of CSR 1000V that is used in the CCA Security Lab, so that I would have the equivalent version. So what I did is I take gig 1, and I sub-interface this guy out to, there's R1, there's an R2, there's an R3, there's an R4, there's an R6, and there's an R7. And so what I do is I connect these guys all back to R5 via gig 1, all sub-interfaces, and they work that way. And then what I do is on R5, as I take another physical interface, gig 3, and I map gig 3 to the VM network. So I'm just going to put VM net. This port group, and this port group is what is allowed to leave this host and talk to my home router, which is a 2851. And so I have my 2851 sitting up here, and I'm a big fan of OSPF. So what do? I run OSPF between R5 and the 2851. And what I do, the R5 between here and excuse me, the 2851, this is an OSPF connection, and I redistribute OSPF into BGP and BGP into OSPF, so that there's reachability between the lab router and the physical router. Yes, and it does work. It's actually really, really nice. And then what I do is R5 and R1, so I have all these connections to all these spoke routers here are all eBGP peerings. So these are all eBGP. And what I do is at each site, so on routers 1, 2, 3, 4, BGP, I go through and I advertise the LAN segment. So let's say there's a LAN segment sitting behind here, and all these computers right here that you see over here on the left hand side of your screen, these guys are connected to this LAN segment. So I have like PC1 sitting here, I have PC2 sitting here, I have PC3 sitting here, so on and so forth. You get the picture. By doing this, what I can do, let me just write this out real quick. So I have all that set up, and then what I do is, because I'm redistributing OSPF into BGP and then BGP into OSPF bidirectionally, what I'm able to do is I can go underneath this BGP, the IPv4 address family, and I advertise the LAN segment into BGP, which then is learned by R5 through external BGP. And then because I'm redistributing BGP into OSPF and OSPF into BGP, then my 2851 ends up learning a 172.16.0.0/16 range, and it's learning that from another set of routers as well, because I have more routers on another server. And what they basically do is I have the 1/24, I have the 2/24, 3/24, so on and so forth. And what I'm able to do is I can take these routes, advertise these ranges into BGP, and then they're learned by the 2851 here via external external OSPF. Because of that, and because of the fact that they're coming from the 2851 and the PC, so this guy right here, go ahead and pull this guy up. It's not working right now because I've got it disabled, but for instance, this PC right here, this is just a regular Windows 7 PC, I have the ability of pinging the internet. Now it's actually not working currently, but like for instance, if I ping, this one is sitting behind R1. So if I ping 10.255.1.1, I can't ping it currently, but it doesn't work. But if I was to enable reachability here, because if I go in here and type in ipconfig, I've been given a gate /all. Sorry, I have a default gateway which points to router 1, which is a virtual router, and then I take and I've got 5555. The reason I have 5555 here is because router 5 in my lab, which is going to be the bridge between my virtual infrastructure and the physical world, I'm going to put in a bunch of DNS entries when I get into things like FlexVPN and cryptography. R5 will be my iOS CA server, things like that, to test things like that out, and go from there. But that'll also give me the ability of testing things like when I get into a web security appliance and when I get into firepower and stuff like that, I'll have public internet reachability. So what I do is on the router, go ahead and bring the router over, I take and I bring this over here real quick. And I'm not going to show you all the back-end stuff because there's some things about my network that I don't want publicly known. And that's just a matter for my own personal, this is my network, so I don't put everything I talk about out there. But if I come in here and I do a show run section BGP, it's a fairly redundant connection, but if I do a show IP interface brief, I don't have the 172 network set up yet, so if I go to interface gig 2 and I type in IP address of 172.16.1.1/24, and then I come in here and I do, and the reason I couldn't ping my router's IP address is because of the fact that it couldn't pass the traffic through R1. So, but if I take and I do a no shut and I exit out, gig 2 on R1 is mapped to a vSwitch called security PC1, which the PC1, its one network, VNIC, is also mapped to that same vSwitch, and promiscuous mode is disabled. What that allows me to do is it allows me to, actually I should say allows two virtual machines to communicate back and forth with each other. So R1 in this case and PC1 are both virtual machines talking in the same vSwitch. I also have R1 has another interface in a different vSwitch, the VM network vSwitch, which gets me external connectivity to the outside world. So now I got to type in IP DHCP pool of R1. I type in here the default router is going to be 172.16.1.1. The network is going to be 172.16.1.0/24. And then the DNS server is going to be, I say 5.5.5.5, 8.8.8.8, and 4.4.4.4. I exit out, and then what I do is I go to router BGP 100, and I type in address family IPv4 and then network of 172.16.1.0/24 mask, and then I now have I've advertised that into the connection. So now if I go back over here to our this guy here, I have my connection. If I come up here and I do a ping to 172.16.1.1, I can ping the router. And if I do go back to the router and I do a do show IP DHCP bind, I don't currently have a connection there. But if I go back here to this guy and I close out the services and I go to if I go to ipconfig and I type in release, give that a second, go grab another, it's going to release the configuration, and then once it does that, it should, I can come in here and type in renew, because I actually want the router to notice that there's connectivity there. And then because of that, I'll come over here. So now you'll notice that in the lower right hand corner I did have an exclamation point on the in the triangle over the network adapter. Now that's gone. So I come over here and hit the enter key. Now I have a binding. Now I have 1.2. So if I come back over here and I do a ping of 10.255.1.1, I can ping my home router, right? And then if I ping quad 8, I can ping Google. Now, a trace route would show you that I'm tracing through my network. So what I'm doing is from, go ahead and move this out of the way real quick. From my from PC1, I have a connection to R1 through that through that vSwitch. That traffic then hits R1, and then as it goes from R1 and R5 are eBGP peers. So if I come over here and type in do show IP BGP summary, because I'm learning prefixes that I don't want you guys to see, and there's some stuff in here because it's going to have some basically there's some subnets in here that, well, my personal subnet of my home internet. Not gonna throw that out there. So there's some stuff out here that's coming in that I receive and that I can have reachability towards. Now router 5 receives that. I do have a connection to router 5 on the 15005 network, and then it goes out to R5, and then R5 sends it out to my home router, which is a 2851. And because it's I don't have it happening right now, but I will in the future, where R1 all the routers will act as internet edge gateways, where they'll all be NATing. So I'll NAT from the inside to the outside, and then I'll throw. I don't necessarily need to have BGP enabled for that, as long as and the reason why I won't need to is because long term I'm gonna make these routers appear as though they are actual internet routers. And the goal with the design and the logic behind that being is when you do that and you're making it actually simulating actual internet, you're making R5 act like a POP, a point of presence, that'll connect to another router that'll get you out to the actual internet. Because then I can take and, like behind R1, I can have another subnet, or I can have another interface on router 1 that connects to another network. And like I could make that the DMZ, or maybe I replace R1 with ASA1, something along those lines. The goal here is to allow things like email security, web security appliance, firepower to be able to give me the outside internet, so that I can actually test reachability and make sure that it's actually working, because then it's an actual URL filter, like WSA. So that's the general understanding there. And then when I go to do cryptography and stuff like that, it'll be semi-legit. Now, obviously, I don't have any. The goal would be to have a PC that would have the ability to call out to the internet if need be. So if I was to pull up a web browser on PC1, go ahead and bring this over here real quick, and let me do this. I don't remember what I searched on last, so let me go make sure that I think it's just going to pull up Google. Yeah, it's going to pull up Google. It's going to take a couple seconds, and the reason why, you might say, well, why is it so slow? Well, the reason it's so slow is because of the fact that the backplane of router 1 and the backplane of router 5 are both 100 kilobits per second. So that means that my total throughput between PC1 and the internet is a whopping 10K a second. It's not very fast. So if I was to go, and let me go in here and type in www.google.com, I should really set oh, actually it's already in that page, never mind. So if I come in here, let's say for instance I decided I want to go to, I'll bring this over here, and I want to go to, in this here, I want to go to Rikers, let's go, yeah, Rikers Island Training.com, and I hit the enter key. It should redirect, but it's going to take some time to do that. And once it does, it should take me there. There's some web redirect stuff, and there is internet connectivity. It's just going to take a second for it to actually kick in and do its thing. But this will allow me to test stuff like that out. So it's resolving, it's trying to find it. It did find it, because it is a Rikers Island Training is an HTTPS site. I set it up that way. There it goes. And as soon as it loads, you'll have the web page. But on a 10K connection, which is just a little bit faster than dial-up. So can I bump that speed up to do more? Well, yeah, potentially, maybe. But that would require me to go out and purchase a license to bump up the throughput. And for testing pings and testing remote desktop connectivity and stuff like that, you know what, it's not really that necessary to do, but that's how I'm allowing connectivity to the outside world. And it does work. You can see it pulled up Rikers Island Training. I typed in the URL. It's going to take a couple seconds for it to load. You might say, well, it still hasn't loaded and it's been like a minute. Well, yeah, it's a lot of data it's trying to transmit over a really slow connection. But if I was to pull that up on a regular web page, it would be much, much faster. And that's because of the fact that I have a pretty high-speed internet connection here at home, and it just takes time to load. But that's one of the things that's kind of cool about being able to do this, because then I can test things out and make sure that the URL filtering is working, and not be like, well, this is what it should look like. This is what it actually does look like. So one of the things that I want to do as I'm going forward here is I want to go out and do more videos like this, where you're going to see me not live stream it per se, but you're going to see me hitting a topic pick a topic in the security blueprint that I happen to be covering right now, and I will be going through and testing out the features and the capabilities of that particular that technology, and it'll just be a video that I post up on Rikers Island up on YouTube that will be free training for people that want to come to Rikers Island training to learn from, and it'll just be free content. There's some people have asked for it, and I thought it was actually a really good idea, because then it gets it's you seeing me go through the struggle, because there's always going to be a level of learning, and even though there are things that I've done 100 times, and it should be off the cuff, off the top of my head, things can go sideways, and you're like, well, I don't know why it's not working. So stuff like that can come into play, and then you've really just got to learn how to deal with that. So there's some other, there's that. I'm also going through a lot of the Ike V1 VPN. So for iOS, that's the other thing that I wanted to cover real quick, was how I'm going about my studying. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring that off camera, off page. And so before I jump over to the documentation and just kind of show you what it is that I'm doing, one of the things that I've been doing, this is if I was you, if you're still watching the video, thanks for hanging out with us. But one of the things that I would recommend you do would be to screenshot that. And then, so there's a question, can you show us the networking? Absolutely, I can show you the networking. So for instance, we have security PC2, for example, right here, this vSwitch. This is a standard vSwitch, vSwitch 2. And what I ended up doing was, I came in here, I created this. It's a virtual machine port group, meaning it's just where you place VMware or vNICs inside of. So I put Win7-2 and I put SecR2, which is the CSR1000V. So SecR2 is R2, PC2 is security PC2. So they're in the same port group. And one of the things that I do is I go in, and on the security settings, if we go to the edit and you go to security, I make sure to disable or accept promiscuous mode. So it's going to allow two VMs to be able to communicate with one another in the same vSwitch. By doing that, yes, that's fine, I can communicate with them. And so the idea would be, if I go through and on R1, for instance, let me go bring this back over here. Let me take this network statement out. Now, by taking this network statement out, PC1 will lose its internet connection to the outside world. Now, the reason I'm doing this, to pull that out, would be because I want to test out VPN functionality. So like for instance here on R1, if I do a show crypto ISA, right now I don't have any VPNs configured. Well, actually that's not true. I do have a VPN configured. But if I come back over here to security PC1 and I pull him up, the page kind of loaded but kind of didn't. But that's okay though. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close this stuff out. And what I want to do is on this guy right here, I'm going to go ahead and ping 172.16.2.1, which is going to be the IP address of PC2. So I'm going to go ahead and ping that, and the first ping should drop, and then I should get a VPN. So what ended up happening here was a VPN just got spun up. I come back over here. I now have a VPN to PC2. And if I come over here and I do a show crypto IPsec SA and hit the enter key, I now have the VPN is spun up. Actually, I've got quite a few peers here, so I've got to come in here and be specific with who I refer to as a peer. Here it is. The pings went through. So now if I come over here and I do ping repeatedly, I come back down here to this guy and I hit this guy and I do a peer do 25.0.0.2 and I type in pipe include PKTS. It's going to show me that there are packets, and the ones right here that should be coming through, this one should be well over 18 now. It should be 25, and 27 and 29 and 30, so on and so forth. So that proves the VPN's working. And that's one of the things that I do, is I make sure that I can get reachability. So like for instance, I can come over here to PC2, bring this guy over, and I can come in, and on here I can go to computer and go to properties. Now it's really slow what I'm about to show you, which is remote desktop. I'll allow connections, which is what I want, and then I can come over here to this guy and I can say, you know what, Mr. Computer, I want to come in here and type in a remote desktop connection. I'm going to type in 172.16.2.1 and I hit the I'm going to go to the options tab here for the local resources. I'm sorry, the experience. This is going to be on a very, very slow modem connection, 56K, which is slower than what I've got. Actually, no. My connection is slower than this. So I have less than a 56K connection to this other connect. So I'm going to go ahead and say connect, and then it's going to ask me to log in. I have another address that I'm going to log in with. I'm going to type in win7-pc2, and I'll type in the password that is configured there. I hit the OK, and then it's going to go out there and it's going to validate the credentials. I think I got those right. And then what will end up happening now is it should be able to form a VPN. And what will end up happening, oh, I had the wrong, let me try, what is the username of that particular computer? I honestly don't remember. Win72-PC. So if I go here to this guy, Win72, yeah, that should be all I have to, oh, you know what, maybe I just get rid of the PC. Yeah, I think that's what I need to do. Just type in Win7-2, and then the password. And there we go. Ta-da! So now it pops in, and now it's going to configure the remote desktop connection. And guess what? I'm now remote desktoped into that computer. So I've overtaken that computer via RDP. Now what this proves is that not only does the VPN work, that I actually can do more than ping. So this is where the power of, if you understand how the networking piece of VMware works and stuff like that, you can easily do things like this. Now, I think these computers are not, okay, this one is not domain controlled yet. Eventually they will be domain controlled, and the reason why I'm going to do that is when I get into things like Identity Services Engine and stuff like that, I'm working on a couple of ways that I can allow ICE to handle things like 802.1x and MAB and stuff like that, and test it out. I'm trying it on the iOS VL2 images to see if that'll work, but I don't know enough about ICE yet in order for this to happen, so it'll take a little bit for me to grasp how that actually comes into play. So one of the things I'm going to do, since I'm on this computer here, is I'm going to pull up this command prompt, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ping 8.8.8.8. Okay, you know, right now it probably won't work because I probably disabled, yes, now that I think about it, yes I did. On router 2, I'm not advertising via BGP the 172.16.2.0/24 network from R2 to R5. Therefore, R5 can't advertise it to the 2851. Therefore, the 2851 can't take that traffic inbound and have a route back to it. So, keeping that in mind, I am remote desktoped into 172.16.2.1. So it's one of the things I like, being able to do a demo like this where you can see it as it's happening. I'm not pausing the video, doing some, typing the configs in, and then once it's working, I bring you guys back in and go, oh, it's working. But this one here, it proves itself. This is one of the things that I like about doing with ESXi. So I can go ahead and close this guy out. Now, and the other thing that's kind of cool about this whole capability here is I don't have to go through and I don't have to spend a ton of money on physical infrastructure. As long as you can use the compatibility with inside of the host, you can do things like this. So the last thing I want to show you guys here is going to be the connectivity, not the connectivity, but the how I'm going about my lab prep. Or I should say not even lab prep, because to be honest with you, I am so far from the CCA security lab right now, it's not even funny. What I'm doing right now is I'm taking an approach that a good friend of mine, that his name's Nick. I don't give full names out on YouTube. But what he did is he took the documentation for the service provider exam, and he literally just went through the entire blueprint via the documentation and labbed the crap out of it. He wrote a book and released it, and if you know who I'm referring to, then you know he's aided a lot of people in passing the service provider lab exam. Well, I'm nowhere near to that level yet, so I've been taking the same approach, because right now there's no complete security preparation material that's video on demand, and honestly right now I don't really want to sit in front of a bunch of videos for the next 200 hours and go through it, because I did that for my RNS exam, and I felt like, because one of the things that happened with my RNS exam was I went through all of INE's material for RNS, and I had the initial false understanding that as long as I went through the All Access or the Advanced Technology course from INE, that would be enough training, followed with the technology labs, that I would be then able to spend a couple of months labbing the technologies up in a fairly large environment, that I would be able to go take the lab exam. Well, that was my first approach, and it wasn't until I got closer to my lab date and I was talking to some individuals in one of the very first study groups that I ever got into, they were like, yeah, that's not going to be enough. And I was like, wait, what? And that's one of the bigger reasons why I failed my first attempt, because I didn't really understand the full scope of what I needed to know. Because I got my butt handed to me in the lab. I mean, let's just be honest with you, I was not prepared. And that was because I had the false understanding of what I should have been learning versus what I had taken the time to, because I had the expectation that the Advanced Technology course was enough training to teach you everything you need to know about the CCA lab exam, and it wasn't. It was a technology course that covered the bulk of the content, but it didn't go into the depth. Well, it did in a lot of areas, but there were some other areas it was severely lacking. Other areas it went way too far. But one of the things that I ended up finding out was you can't just rely on the videos to prepare yourself for the exam. And I think after I got through the technology course for the second or third time, and I'd gone through it, it wasn't until I talked to people that had sat for the lab, they were working on it, and this, that, or the other, that I realized how much more work I had to do, which actually pushed me out another 4 or 5 months, because it took just that long to learn all these different additional capabilities. And because I had to know them for the lab, which I said, they asked me, well, have you covered this? Have you covered this? Have you covered this? And I said, no. He's like, you're going to want to. And I'm like, okay. And it wasn't because this was on the lab, this wasn't on the lab. It was, you have to look at the blueprint, and one of the guys said, you know what, you're better off just going through all the documentation for that one section. And I looked through it, and there was a lot of stuff I just didn't get. But we're talking, this is going back probably a good 3 years, and so a good 2.5, 3 years. And I was like, oh, well, wait a minute, that's okay. And a lot of it was just, hey, you need to understand what it is that is going to be expected of you. So I was like, okay. So then it was fall back to, I figured, okay, just go through the ATC again, all the workbook labs, and you're good. And they're like, no, that's not good enough. Here's what you need to do. And so they worked with me on getting me to that point. And there was a lot of have you played around with this technology? Ever played around with this technology? And literally what they were doing was they were taking like the titles of topics in the documentation and throwing it at me. Hey, have you covered this topic? I'm like, I don't even know what the hell that is. And they're like, yeah, okay. And they would send me a URL through chat and say, go read this page. I'm like, okay. So they were doing a lot of extra, hey, this is what you need to be paying attention to. This is stuff that you might get tested on. Good to know. And a lot of stuff I had never even heard of. But that just aided my understanding of what was going on. So let's go ahead and I will show you guys how I have OneNote online, and I have a bunch of PDFs that I've downloaded, but I also use the documentation online. So I'll get that set up and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so here's a couple things that I do. So first thing that I would recommend you do is take this URL and save it. So I have it bookmarked and I save it in my bookmarks here for Mark Cisco. I take that, and then this gives me all the versions of all the platforms and the versions of code that they're going to be running in the CCIE lab. So this is how I have built off my lab, if you will. And then what I did is I've got some other stuff in here. This is actually an older version of AnyConnect. AnyConnect 4.5 is out now. I've got a bunch of Windows 7 computers that I'm using as test. I've actually got to deploy Windows Server 2008. I've got 2012 running now. APIC-EM, I will put that in later on when it becomes, when I've covered more topics. I've got 9.8 code for ASA. I've got this CSR. I've got this version of IOSVL3. I've got the 1553M. I loaded into ESXi. I have the VMDK, and it crashes a lot. I'm not sure why. So I really haven't spent a lot of time there. But one of the things that I've been doing is I've been pulling up the documentation and comparing iOS to iOS XE for a one-for-one view of it. There we go. And I've been noticing that iOS, for at least just the VPN portion of things, EasyVPN is a little bit more thoroughly supported on iOS than it is on iOS XE. And then like you're creating or configuring a router to be basically a proxy server with the IP proxy auth proxy command globally in iOS is supported where it's not in XE. Little things like that. But at the end of the day, those are kind of irrelevant. So I take this is my first step here. Then what I do is I take the documentation. So we'll come over here to the documentation site. I took this, and what I did is I literally went down to iOS security. Now this is iOS specifically, and I just middle mouse click and open these guys up, and they're all going to be purpled out except for EasyVPN. But what I did is I took this and I said, like, let's take, for instance, let's take GetVPN. I'm going to open up GetVPN. So I have this. This is going to be all of the chapters in this book. So the first one I do is I click on this guy, and then in the book contents, you keep the table of contents kind of like a PDF would. And I keep this guy here on the left-hand side, and I click on the chapter contents. What I do is I take from here and I copy this right down here, go all the way down to the very bottom. I copy and paste all of this right here, and what I do is I go to here, I copy, and then I literally come over here to my security tab here. This is my security OneNote doc, and I'm in the process of building it out, but I clicked down on the CCIE security tab, and then I went down here to like GetVPN. I have a tab for GetVPN, and what I did is I literally copy and pasted the contents of the documentation into OneNote. And what I do is I'm going through this, and this is what you get. I go through here, and what I have done is I've gone through and I go line by line through the documentation and I fill it in. Because then what this does, it gives me the URL comes with a copy. So if I'm like, if I need to look at the documentation quickly, I click on this guy and it takes me right out to it, and then I have my capture right there. Now I've deployed GetVPN once. It's actually pretty easy and pretty cool once you go go through there, and what I do is I literally come through here and I copy and paste this stuff in here. Now, one of the other things that I do here is I purchase a Safari Books Online subscription. Now, I'm not going to show you any actual content from the book. I can't do that. I've purchased these are all copyrighted books. This is Safari Cisco Press Online, but there's more to it than just Cisco Press. Like, for instance, I've got this Practical Cryptography here. This book is actually really good. Actually, what I'll do is I'll expand this one out. I'll run through the table of contents real quick. The very top here, it goes through all like the ciphers and stuff like that. And what it does is it goes through and it talks about, actually I've not logged in at the moment, but what it'll do is it'll tell you about the ciphers. Like, you have the Caesar cipher, the mono, and actually this is good because it's I'm actually signed out, so this isn't actually showing anything that you wouldn't, if you hadn't already signed in, this would, as far as you'd be able to get. But what this does is it shows you a non-Cisco version of cryptography. So, for instance, if you're trying to build your theoretical understanding of how cryptography works for VPNs and like pre-shared keys, or not pre-shared keys, but encryption as a whole, it goes into detail in like triple DES and AES and SHA and MD5 and stuff like that. Stuff that on the blueprint, if I come back over here to this guy and I go to, I think it's secure connectivity. This is copied right off the blueprint. And I come in here, and what it does is, like at the very top here, and I have to be careful when I scroll because I've taken a lot of notes from the Cisco Press books, and I've copied them in here as a reference material as I'm studying. So, like for instance, right here you have compare and contrast cryptographic and hash algorithms such as AES, DES, triple DES, ECC, SHA, and MD5. So what my goal is I'm going through here, and as you can see over here on the left-hand side, I've expanded out quite a bit of stuff. But this is the stuff from probably GRE tunnels down is all focused on a specific topic. So, like for instance, SSL VPN. I've got iOS and I have iOS XE, and then I'll throw another one there. Would be SSL VPN on I have a dedicated ASA one, so if I was to click on ASA, it'd be the same thing. So this is documentation that I basically took the VPN configuration here. I basically took the documentation table of contents for ASA 9.8 code, and I copied it in here. So I've gone through a portion of this, but there's still a lot that I have to cover. So this is one of those things where I will go through and as I hit ASA and the detail that I need to hit it in, I will fill in the blanks for all this stuff, and then I'll be labbing it as I go. So I'll be taking additional notes. Like for instance, I'll give you an example of what I mean by notes. So I'll click in here on Ike, and it always, nice thing about OneNote, this is free, 100% free. So what I do is I take and I go in here and I created a free, it's a free account. You just log in with OneNote. Just a regular, I use my Yahoo account, and then I logged in. You can open up OneNote out of the browser, and then stuff like that. And I have not shared this with anybody, and it's not on Skype. So I'm not going to share this. So if you're like, oh my God, look at that, I'm not sharing this. Not right now. And the reason why is because I haven't played with the sharing settings, and I don't know if I just give you view access, stuff like that. But a lot of work goes into this. So when I say a lot of work, going through the documentation line by line, it took me 3 days, 3 full 8-hour days to go through PKI. So let me give you an example of the documentation. This is a lot of the documentation here, so I'm not showing anything I shouldn't be. I'm not showing you anything that I shouldn't be showing you. This is actually right out of iOS. If you do a show crypto ISACAMP default policy, this is what it's going to spit out at you. These are all the pre-built ISACAMP policies for phase 1 that are pre-built. They're just there. This is all documentation, straight out of the documentation. So if I come down here to this section, so this is me. I was labbing earlier today, and I was covering phase 1 cryptography. And one of the things that I was going back through is actually this plays off of my lab that I just was going over and how this comes into play. So I was taking a look at how phase 1 works and a lot of detail, and then I got into call admission control, and I was taking some notes on call admission control and how that looks where you limit the amount of IKE and IPsec SAs that can be formed and stuff like that. And you know, if you have too many connections, you know, what kind of output does it give you, and how do you resolve issues as you come across them, stuff like that. So I'm still pretty early in my prep, but this is some of the stuff that I've been doing. So I take the documentation, like secure connectivity, I take GetVPN, and I literally copy and paste all this information into OneNote. And then I can then take, and I don't delete anything. I won't add in here like standards and stuff like that, at least not right now. I might go in and, like for instance, if I click on expand that out, it's going to take me to the standards doc, and it should show me the RFCs that relate to GetVPN. So the security architecture for the Internet Protocol, RFC 2401, and then the group domain of interpretation, which is basically the underpinnings for GetVPN, RFC 6407. So I could take that. This is more when I'm building my slide deck to talk to show you guys how this stuff works. This is more or less what I would use. So that's basically how this comes into play. So all this documentation is 100% free. You can download it. You can. I have multiple copies of it. I have a copy on my phone. I have a copy on my iPad. I have a copy on my home computer, my work computer, and then I have I have a Google Drive that I keep stuff inside of, just in case, you know, for whatever reason. The reason I keep multiple copies is I never know where I'm at, and if I want to do a little bit of reading. So, a case in point, I was commuting home today, and there was a really, really bad accident on the interstate. It actually shut down the interstate for a good period of time. I actually sat on the interstate, parked on the interstate for in 10-minute increments. So I was doing that, and as I'm sitting there, I'm like, I pull my phone up, and I'm leaning forward, and I'm reading on my phone as I'm sitting there waiting. I'm like, every couple seconds I'd look up to see if the traffic was moving. I was sitting there like going like this on my phone, reading documentation, because I don't really have the ability to study while I'm driving, but go from there. So one of the things I like about Safari is it's relatively cheap. I think it's like $40 a month, and then I get Cisco Press. There's a lot of other stuff that is out there, like for instance, you have you've got all the live lesson material. You have all the stuff for Cisco Press. There's VMware, because I have to recertify my VCP, so I've been reading through VMware's book just to get a refresher. I'm almost spreading myself too thin as of lately, where I need to take some time, and I just recently passed the routing and switching written exam to recertify my CCIE, so I'm good to go for another 2 years. That was a big weight off my shoulders. I had to get that done. I'm recording CCNA security. That's taking its time. I'm recording CCA route switch to get that entire stuff done. So if you haven't checked, I'm a good portion of the way through that. I'm working on OSPF right now. And I'm also trying to record a VCP course. So, but I'm doing, and I was for a period of time going to go and do labs after I'm done with video course, or a section in the video exam, and I decided that was I wanted just to pound the videos out and get them out of the way, because then I can fall back and over a period of time I can build the workbooks out and do that, because I've actually gotten quite a few requests for full-scale labs, and because I've had a couple of people reach out to me and say, we like your videos, we know the workbooks are in progress, other vendors have workbooks that are available now, so we can use those workbooks, but we're waiting to see your full-scale labs. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I'm expecting to be done with the route switch course. Hopefully, my goal would be to be done sometime before Halloween, October 31st. That's I'm targeting that as my deadline. And as long as I can just get in there and start recording, and as long as the juices are flowing, everything should just kind of fall into place. But if we go to, let's see here. Here on Rikers Island Training, if you go to Products and you go to CCIE and you go Routing and Switching version 5 Video on Demand, I've updated it a little bit, giving you guys a little bit of color to play with. I now currently have 111 videos and 45 plus hours of content. So this is the actual, if you were to go to Rikers Island Training right now, today, this is all live, 100% ready to go. So I've been going through and I got going on this stuff, and EIGRP is done, and I am in the process of still writing labs and stuff like that, but it's labs take a long time to write, because I can't just copy and paste some configs and put a one-liner in there. I've got to actually do my due diligence on building out the labs, and the labs are going to be involved. I'm putting more effort into the videos than I am in the labs, and then the full-scale labs are going to come out. I'm going to start doing full-scale labs probably in November. Once I get done with the video series, full-scale labs will come out, and they'll take some time. They'll be involved. What I'm actually doing, if I log in here real quick, I can show you what the workbook will look like. So I go my account and I log in, and then I come in here and I go to the welcome page. I come down here to my account and I go to workbooks, and I go to like the CCIA level. I come in here, I click on the RNS workbook online, and like for instance, if I wanted to come in here and do, I did router on a stick the other day. So I did router on a stick. This is like an example. This is the topology you'd be able to see. So this is what you would have to configure, and then the task is right here. So it says, you know, router 7 is going to be your inter-VLAN routing router, and this is what you have to do. So if you want to test yourself out, this is how you would do this. On physical equipment, on basic configuration of GNS3, you should be able to do this with an ether switch module, stuff like that. This doesn't require any specific line of code. Now, let's say you're ready to go. You've gone through and you configured it, and then you click on the solution, redirects you to a different page, and then you come through here and it gives you the same topology before. It gives you the task again, and then it shows you configuration wise what you need to type in, and then you have to go through and this is verification that it's working, and here are the pings, and so on and so forth. Now, the one thing that I've been liking about the online workbook, for those of you that have access to it, is that if you've purchased the CCIE content, so if you've gone through the products and you've gone to complete access, either monthly or yearly, you get everything. There's no restriction on your access to the site. If you have purchased Associate and Professional, the workbooks are an additional cost. Now, I'm not producing any more PDF version of the workbook. What I will be doing is I will have the workbooks available for online only, for at least the foreseeable future. And then what I do is I come through here and if there's an errata, or maybe I'm wrong on something and I need to go fix it or modify, there's a typo, I can come through here and show you what's going on, and then I can, as soon as I make the adjustment, you guys get the update like that. So everybody gets access to the updates right away, because it's web-based, which makes it that much easier to work with. But that's one of the things that I like about doing this, is it gives me that flexibility. So then I'm still working on things like at the bottom of the page, like the previous lab, the next lab, or go back to the middle, go back to the workbook homepage or something like that, or workbook landing, or previous lab, next lab, so on and so forth. Here you've literally have to go back to, you have to click back. I'm working on building the navigation into it, so that it's easier for everyone to do what they got to do. Currently, only this is all I've got done so far. I think it's a pretty good start, but I need to fill in some gaps. There's some stuff that's missing. Obviously, I need to go into a bit more detail on some things and stuff like that, but I've actually been combining several features into it. So it's like I come through here. This is a different topology. This is the topology you actually saw in the layer 2 section. I narrowed it down where it made sense. Like router on a stick, you don't need to have 30 routers or 18 switches deployed. But I come through here and I've made it kind of like what you could potentially see in the lab exam. I've worded them in such a way that you kind of have to interpret what they're asking you, and then if you click on the solution, it takes you to the solution, and then you know what you got to type in, and so on and so forth. So it's designed to make you think a little bit, and if you get it, then great. If not, you're encouraged to go back to the workbook or to the video. But at the very bottom of the page, there's always the email tab. Or you can go to Connect and you can contact me. You can send me a message and say, hey Rob, I don't get this. Feel free to email me any time of the day. If I need to, or if it's a simple or one-liner, I'll go, yes, you could do that, but no, this won't work, or something along those lines. I'm willing to help you guys out, totally. So that's what I've got going on. I will be producing material for security coming out more frequently because I'm a little further along now, but it's hard to what I would like to refer to as free range record when I'm trying to record for the CCA course as well as for the CCNA course. I want to get the CCNA course out here done as well, but there's some things that I have to go through and make sure lab-wise work and get that done. I'd say it's a good portion of the way complete now. A lot of the main things are done, but I have to go back through and really dig into it a little bit more because I don't want there to be anything on the CCNA blueprint that I haven't demonstrated yet in a practical lab. So that's pretty much what I've got going on. That's pretty much it, guys. I'd say I stay pretty busy, but busy is good for me because it keeps me. I'm always thinking about what's going on and stuff like that. For those of you that have been a subscriber of me for a while, and you've been loyal, I really do appreciate it. I am sorry that I'm taking so long to get material out to you guys. I actually, if you come over here to Connect, I do have free training in here now. And the free training is I've actually mapped a lot of stuff from YouTube to here. So I'm going to continue to do stuff like this as we go along. And this is just to help aid you guys along in your prep. And I'll put more and more content in here as we go along. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to categorize it a little bit to where you'll have free training and then you'll have like VPN. And I'll have to expand that out. But you don't have to log in for this. You can literally just start watching the video if you're not even logged in. It's like if I click on my account and I go log out, so now I'm logged out. I don't have access into it. I go connect and free training. This stuff is 100% ready to play like it is on YouTube. And I did it on purpose. They're mapped from YouTube, so you guys can watch the videos and start taking notes and doing different stuff. But the reason I'm doing this stuff is because of the fact that it only helps me help you, and then there's something you'd like to see covered that isn't covered. Maybe you're in a one of the things that I like about this type of training is it's free, and so you can never go wrong with free training. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. You can go wrong if the person that's teaching you doesn't know what they're talking about. I won't release something unless it works. Now, I'm going to put a caveat on that. There might be a follow-on where something I will go like 90% of the video will be I know something will work 100% based off of this configuration. But there might be a thing where I might go off script a little bit, just in the terms where I haven't tested this out. I don't know for sure if it's going to work. I usually state that, like, well, you got this other one here. Never touched this before, or it's been a long time since I've messed with it. This may not work the way that I think it does. Let's go just give it a shot, and it'll be more like shoot from the hip. But they're normally towards the end of the video, and sometimes that doesn't even make it into the video. Sometimes I edit it out because I spent half an hour trying to figure it out. Other times it's like 10 minutes, but I think I'm close. But that is the beauty of being able to do stuff like this. So I do appreciate all of the support everyone's given me. You guys have been awesome. Thank you so much for your support. And until next time, guys, take it easy.